Welcome back, everyone. My name is Gina Callender, and I'm a director in strategic planning at Edison. I've been working for Edison for the last 20 years and a long-time AABE-NYMAC member. I'm happy to be back with you, and I hope you all enjoyed your breakout sessions. I have the honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Representative Yvette Clark, Vice Chair of the House. Hailing from Central Brooklyn, Congresswoman Yvette Diane Clark feels honored to represent the community that raised her. She is the proud daughter of Jamaican immigrants and takes her passion for her Caribbean heritage to Congress, where she co-chairs the Congressional Caribbean Caucus and works to foster relationships between the United States and the Caribbean community. Clark is the vice chair of the powerful Energy and Commerce Committee and a member of the Homeland Security Committee. Clark has been a member of the Congressional Black Caucus since coming to Congress in 2007, and today chairs its Immigration Task Force while acting as an active member of the Census 2020 Task Force. Prior to being elected to the United States House of Representatives, Congresswoman Clark served on New York City's City Council, representing the 40th District, and she succeeded her pioneering mother, former City Council member, Dr. Una S.T. Clark, making them the first mother-daughter succession in the history of the City Council. So please help me welcome Congresswoman Clark.
Good afternoon, everyone. And let me thank Gina for that very kind introduction. And just a point of clarification, I do serve as vice chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House of Representatives, not the vice chair of the House of Representatives. A slight distinction there, but I wanted to make sure that I made it. Let me first start by thanking my dear friend, Bill Suggs, who never leaves my side as we discuss Blacks in Energy. And let me thank the American Association of Blacks in Energy and all the members of the New York Metropolitan chapter for inviting me to come speak here with you at your 2020 Virtual Energy Summit. And it is truly an honor to be here with you all at this very important event, very timely as always. For those of you who don't know me, I am Congresswoman Yvette D. Clark, and I represent New York's 9th Congressional District. That's Central and South Brooklyn. And I like to say it's from the Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn to the Atlantic Ocean in Brooklyn. In the House of Representatives, I've had the pleasure of this Congress as serving as vice chair on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, one of the oldest committees in the Congress with a broad jurisdiction over topics ranging from healthcare to consumer protection and, of course, energy. On the Energy and Commerce Committee, I also serve on our subcommittee on the environment and climate change, where we have been working diligently to ensure that every American has access to clean air and clean water, and to ensure that our nation is taking the appropriate and necessary steps to address climate change and the impact it's already having on our communities. So let me begin by acknowledging the simple truth that 2020 has been a very tumultuous and challenging year for us all. We've had to contend with not just one, but multiple crises that have pushed our communities to their breaking point and exposed the deep and systemic injustices that exist throughout our society. This is true across the nation, but I know that it is especially true in Brooklyn and throughout New York City. The COVID-19 pandemic hit us first and hit us the worst, particularly in Black and Brown communities. And the impacts of this public health crisis continue to be felt every day as this virus continues to spread. As a result, our economy and our businesses, our workers, our families are struggling, including many who work in the clean energy and energy efficiency sectors. Our infrastructure and our public transit system in particular, which was already in a state of disrepair before the pandemic hit, is currently at a point of budgetary crisis that we have simply never seen before. In addition to the pandemic and its impact on our communities, we've also witnessed the unjustified killings and mistreatment of Black women and men at the hands of those who are sworn to protect them, and the enormous public outcry and protests that have followed over racial justice and over the systemic injustices that have existed far too long in our law enforcement and criminal justice systems. And as if this all wasn't enough, we've also had to contend this year with record wildfires out west and an uncharacteristically long and active hurricane season that once again impacted the Northeast with the significant power outages in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Isaias. But despite these many interrelated challenges that 2020 has thrown our way, as I always say, hope springs eternal. As I always like to say, that with these great challenges also comes the great opportunities. Opportunities for us to invest in our communities and address the longstanding inequities that have been laid bare throughout this very difficult year. And we cannot simply build back to the way things were before the pandemic, because the old way of doing things wasn't working for everybody. Instead, we need bold solutions to build back better and address the disparities that plague our old version of normal, so to speak, and that existed before the pandemic. This year, in the House of Representatives, we have begun laying the groundwork to do exactly that. After the CARES Act was signed into law back in March, the House subsequently passed the HEROES Act, which was done in May. And that would deliver nearly $1 trillion in much needed relief for the state and local governments, as well as provide significant funding to address the crisis facing our transit systems. Unfortunately, this bill continues to sit on Mitch McConnell's desk in the Senate. And you may have heard recently in the press about the types of negotiations that continue, which, in my humble opinion, really don't meet the mark and address the enormous need that we have as a nation at this time. In addition to COVID relief funding, my colleagues and I have in the House, and especially on the Energy and Commerce Committee, have also been hard at work crafting bold and historic legislation to invest in our infrastructure, address climate change, and put us on the path towards a clean economy that creates new clean energy jobs and spurs clean energy innovation. In July, the House passed H.R. 2, a more than $1.5 trillion infrastructure package, otherwise known as the Moving Forward Act. The bill is historic not only for the much needed investments that it makes in modernizing our nation's roads, bridges, transit systems, schools, and housing, but also for the inclusion of major clean energy investments in our energy transmission system and clean transportation future. Among its many provisions, H.R. 2 invests more than $70 billion to transform our nation's electric grid to accommodate greater deployment of renewable resources and develop a nationwide electric vehicle charging network to support the future adoption of electric vehicle technology for personal and commercial use. The bill also supports the immediate widespread adoption of zero-emission cars, vans, and buses through new extended tax credits for purchasing vehicles, as well as policies that encourage domestic zero-emission vehicle manufacturing and deployment of publicly accessible electric vehicle charging infrastructure. By investing in workers and communities across the country, H.R. 2 supports American manufacturing and innovation while simultaneously putting our nation on a path towards net zero emissions and addressing long-standing disparities. In addition to this historic infrastructure package, the House more recently in September also passed landmark legislation to address climate change and invest in clean energy research and development. This legislation, known as the Clean Economy, Jobs and Innovation Act, or HR 4447, provides robust support for comprehensive clean energy research, development, demonstration, and commercial activities out of the Department of Energy that will frankly be key to achieving meaningful carbon reduction targets as we move towards net zero. And in addition to the funding provided for research and development in HR 4447, it also includes major investments in making sure that uh, our infrastructure is built out. By investing in workers and communities across the country, HR2 supports American manufacturing and innovation while simultaneously making it all possible. The immediate impact across the nation, including programs to develop and deploy clean energy resources, improve energy efficiency for homes and businesses, electrify our transportation sector, modernize the electric grid, and reduce carbon pollution from industrial and traditional sources. However, even meaningful investments such as these are own on their own would not be enough to build back better and more equitably than before, which is why we introduced and have also included unprecedented environmental justice provisions to ensure that the benefits of this legislation are reaped by low income communities and communities of color who have contributed the least to climate warming emissions, yet who have unfortunately bared the brunt of climate impacts and environmental pollution over the many decades. In both these pieces of legislation, HR2 and HR 4447, I helped lead the effort to expand access to zero emission transportation and to ensure that underserved communities are placed front and center in our policy solutions. We can't limit the mantra of Black Lives Matter to only law enforcement and criminal justice. Black Lives Matter in the energy space as well. And I believe that together, these pieces of legislation send a clear message that the House of Representatives is ready now more than ever to develop bold solutions and make the critical investments in infrastructure and technology that will help us to achieve a state and our state and citywide goals of energy efficiency and emissions reduction. The truth is, we know all too well from our experience dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic that the connections between air pollution and underlying health conditions and COVID-19 outcomes are inextricably linked, particularly in Black and Brown communities. And when we dig deeper, we find that many chronic and underlying conditions such as asthma and heart disease are directly related to the quality of a person's environment. In fact, in Brownsville, Brooklyn, located within my congressional district, it has the highest rates of adult asthma out of any neighborhood in the city. And that's why it's vital now more than ever that we implement strong policy to invest in our communities, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and mitigate localized air pollution. Looking forward, I believe it is critical that we continue to address the underlying issues of equity and resilience that persist in our society and our energy system. New Yorkers know all too well about the importance of resilience when it comes to our energy system. From the intense summer heat waves to storms like Sandy and Isaias that put enormous strain on our transmission system. And that's why I, along with Congresswoman Barragan of California, recently introduced the Energy Resilient Communities Act to establish a $1.5 trillion grant program out of the Department of Energy to fund the development of clean energy microgrids for critical community structures, everything from schools and hospitals to public and affordable housing. We have also seen the benefits of clean energy microgrids can bring to our communities right here in New York City within my district in Brownsville. The Marcus Garvey apartments are a testament to the ability of microgrids to enhance resiliency while staving off the need for expensive additions to the electric grid. I applaud the work of Con Edison, NYSERDA, and all those who were involved in the project. And I look forward to working with you in the future to help direct more funding from the federal government towards similar initiatives. In the same spirit of equity and resilience, I also plan to continue using my position in the upcoming Congress to promote equity in the transition towards a carbon-free transportation sector. Just as we need to invest in charging networks along our national highways, I think it is equally, if not more critical, that we develop and invest in charging networks within and around urban areas, particularly in cities like New York, where a large portion of our residents lack access to EV charging within their building. And unless we are very intentional in our steps, history teaches us that low-income communities and communities of color will be the last and the least to receive investment in clean vehicle technologies, which is why I plan to reintroduce an updated version of my bill, HR 5751, the Electric Vehicles for Underserved Communities Act, that includes a charging equity program to fund a nationwide development of publicly accessible charging stations in locations such as public housing and municipal street parking. I want to recognize the work already being done throughout New York City to address the lack of public charging infrastructure. And I applaud all of you and your colleagues for this effort and stand ready to assist however I can. As we move into 2021, it is critical that we now advance these important pieces of legislation at the federal level into law. That is why I plan to work tirelessly with the new administration and my colleagues in the Senate so that we can pass legislation to significantly and equitably invest in our clean energy future. In 2009, the last time we faced a major economic crisis, Congress passed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which in many ways helped kickstart U.S. investment in clean energy research and deployment. Now, with a Biden-Harris administration in the White House and an economy that is still suffering from the effects of this ongoing pandemic, I believe that we must once again come together to pass legislation that invests in our communities and puts us on the path to a clean energy future that is just, equitable, and resilient. So to close, I want to applaud all at AABE and the New York Metropolitan Chapter for the great work that you've been doing in our area to bring diversity and minority aspirations into the energy sector and centering them. And also for your steadfast dedication to bringing us into the clean energy future. I'm also proud of the effort that New York City and our energy sector companies and organizations are taking to meet the challenges of climate change head on. And I want to encourage you all to keep paving the path forward for the rest of the nation to follow. Thank you all again for giving me the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy, stay strong, stay blessed, and most importantly, wear a mask. Thank you.
Tohma and Clarke, really appreciate your comments and how you tied together some of the things that were talked about at the other breakout sessions and bringing the federal look to it. So really appreciate that. Thank you. Next, I want to introduce Thoma Gadson-Shaw, who's going to be giving us our closing remarks for today's Day 1 Energy Summit. Tohma is a Brooklyn native and grew up in Brownsville and Bedford-Stuyvesant sections of Brooklyn. She has her bachelor degree in criminal justice and sociology and her master's degree in criminal justice and urban studies. Tohma worked as an investigator for the U.S. government contracts before joining Con Edison in 2007 as a specialist in employee and labor relations. Tohma has held positions of increasing responsibility at Con Ed in HR communications and projects and stores operations, and currently works as a department manager in human resources, labor, and wage. When Tohma is not at work, she's engaged in community service initiatives and outreach as an active member of Harlem's historic First Corinthian Baptist Church. And Tohma is also an active member of Delta Sigma Delta Sorority Incorporated. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tohma.
Thank you, Representative Clarke, and thank you, Gina, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Tohma Gadson-Shaw, and I'm honored to have been a part of this transparent discussion today. Now I know I'm standing between you and lunch, so I will be brief. However, I must take a moment to acknowledge what we heard here today. We heard balanced and diverse perspectives from professionals in the scientific community, energy sector, and elected officials about where we are, where we need to be, and how we plan to get there together. We were welcomed by Bill Suggs and provided a history and overview of AABE and our mission. We were also welcomed from Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, who spoke to us about his support and partnership of our efforts, who said that nothing great comes out of Brownsville, Brooklyn. I was born and raised there. Out of the box thinking about how we can collaborate and innovate to achieve a sustainable future. We were challenged as we listened intently to panelists within the sustainable energy and supplier diversity breakout sessions. In the sustainable energy space, the panelists brought unique insights to the table, putting in perspective the roadmap of what's to come of the energy landscape as it results to legislative measures involving energy sustainability. We could not ignore what needed to close the gaps that have been exposed as a result of the pandemic, so that was widely discussed. Reliability, affordability, access, and integration were some of the many themes discussed to help in that effort and beyond. In the supplier diversity session, we heard from a group of supplier experts and minority and women-owned business leaders speak candidly about the future of diverse businesses and the importance of inclusion and equitable distribution of their services by corporations. They also shared best practices, discussed current trends, the impact of our current social climate and the pandemic, and outlined measurements of equity moving forward. And finally, with optimism and passion, we heard from Representative Yvette Clark, who talked to us about her responsibilities as an elected official, her commitment and involvement, and how the pandemic impacted her and her community that she so diligently serves. She highlighted how the pandemic heightened issues in our infrastructure and transportation system that have been ignored previously. But I love her point that great challenges make room for great opportunities. She assured us that the House of Representatives is at work to push bills to help with some of the needs outlined to include new energy innovation. She is clearly at work in Brooklyn for the benefit of the nation and focused on creating a better future for us all. I cannot wait to hear more about HR 5751. No community should suffer disproportionate burdens, go without enjoying environmental benefits, or be denied access to opportunities to have a seat at the table and a voice at the table. Sustainable development will save us from ourselves, yet oftentimes we are told that sustainability policy agendas are not feasible. The good news is, what I heard here today was that they are feasible. Compliance is basic, and we are beyond basic. Amplifying existing practices, policies, and laws require true commitment and support. Through our devotion, our collaboration, and continuing this conversation, we can push the needle of sustainability, equity, and policy in the right direction. I kept my word. I won't stand between you and lunch. I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak here today, and I now pass it back over to Gina Callender, who will give you some final reminders.
Closing remarks. And I just want to thank all the speakers again for your time and commitment to working collaboratively towards a clean energy future. And I would like to encourage everyone to return tomorrow for day 2 of our Energy Summit at 11 a.m. As a reminder, like any conference, it's all about the networking. So we will leave the auditorium open for networking after this session. To network, please click on Attendees and select a person that you would like to chat with. I hope you enjoyed day 1 and come back tomorrow for day 2. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.